Vénganse, vénganse, vénganse. Vamos a jugar hoy, hoy, hoy. Vamos a cantar hoy, hoy, hoy. Vamos a llorar hoy, hoy, hoy. Vamos a fumar hoy, hoy, hoy. Vamos a jugar hoy, hoy, hoy. Vamos.
I wasn't paying attention.
Neither was I, and I'm the one controlling everything. Damn it.
Man, okay, damn. Strike one already. Welcome, friends, to season 2, episode 16 of On This Frequency. We're missing someone today. We are missing Natalie. She's doing baby duties for my wonderful, tubby little, beautiful little baby, my nephew. But we are your hosts. I'm Rickie.
And I'm Raymond Andrew.
And we have a special guest joining us today. SP, welcome. So if you're listening to the audio version of this episode, we'd like to invite you to watch our live stream show on Twitch every Friday, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's always a different experience when you can see all of our body language. It makes a difference. So that's twitch.tv. What do you call this little slash thing? Twitch.tv. Backslash on this frequency. Oh, I miss Natalie.
She had that thing locked down so nice. And
It's so smooth.
She's good at what she does.
Yeah, thanks.
No. Oh, my God.
Thanks, Ray.
Oh, my God. Everything. See? Can't say nothing.
But welcome, Twitch family. Thank you, all of those of you joining us. Wow, I'm really caught off guard that Natalie is not here. I'm sorry in advance, okay? I'm sorry in advance. But so here we are.
I'm just trying to figure out what the hell just happened. Because I have everything here, but it just started, like, glitching on me.
It's okay. It's Friday. There's a new moon on the rise, so.
All right.
SP, I am so happy that you are joining us here today. I met you for the first time, I think it was last year at The Real Ones.
Yeah.
At The Real Ones, you were next to the sound system, and you and I had a profound conversation, which I cannot remember, but I just remember, like, man, this man is serious business about who he is, and ever since then I've been a huge fan of yours. So I really appreciate that you're here with us. And so I want to ask you a very simple but profound question, and that is, who are you?
Who am I? I was kind of thinking about that on the drive here. I was like, I think that's what she's going to ask me. Either tell me about yourself or who.
Oh, you're a mind reader
you.
now. Okay.
No, he pays attention to the podcast. He's an avid listener. We appreciate that, man.
There we go.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for having me here.
Yes.
It's always a good time being in this space. So being with friends like you.
Yes, sir.
So, I don't know. Well, I guess I am a Filipino immigrant that is a husband, a father, a DJ.
There we go.
A lover of food and coffee.
Food and coffee. A baker now.
A
also.
baker, yeah.
All the things that gravitated me towards this man in a non-romantical type of way, if I had to
Bromantical.
Bromantical, there it is. Bromantical.
I love that. I'm with the
You
bromantical.
are in the short amount of time that I've known you, you are definitely one of a kind, bro. Like I've never. And it's weird, so because we always meet people online, right? We always meet people through Instagram, just based off of the people that we know mutually,
yes.
right? So when we ended up following each other, just have like slight convos of go with common interests online, but then we actually met each other at Icy Ice's house.
Yeah.
And it was just
that was the first time?
That was the first time I met him.
That was also the first cookie exchange, right?
That was the very first cookie exchange, and you know what? Shout out to Icy Ice and Heidi because
they get down.
They have probably one of the best. What's the word I want to say?
Spreads.
Not just spread, but they
great energy in their home too.
Just the way they greet people and they interact, like their hospitality is
on point.
Is just immaculate. Like it's notches above everybody else is.
We need to work on our game here.
A little bit, a little bit, but it was cool because it's like we had all this food. We had like a smorgasbord of just random stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And then SP walks in with this, like, I got cookies. And these weren't just regular cookies,
What you got?
bro.
What you got? Right.
These are like, I was like, yo, these cookies are on OD, bro. Like, what is going on with these cookies? And I was like afraid to have like a whole one.
But it's an we didn't mean to start talking about the cookie, but we're going here now.
Yeah, I apologize for interrupting your intro.
No.
That's actually a good point. It is an intimidating cookie, okay? When I came home that night from the Real Ones when we went, and I had the cookie in front of me, and we were just kind of, like, there was a moment that I was just staring at the cookie like...
Was that your first encounter with the
That
cookie?
was my first encounter with the cookie.
Was the day that we went for the last one we seen him at?
Yes.
Oh,
so
wow.
then I'm looking at it like, how am I going to eat this cookie? Because it is intimidating. It's a lot to process, right? And I thought, do I do this with milk? Do I do this on my own? Do I do this with ice cream? How am I going to take this cookie down? So it was just in portions, like little bits and pieces. And then I could not stop. I was just hooked. It was like a drug.
Dude, it's like the minute you take a piece, your arm starts itching. You're like, oh, I got to have more.
Facts.
But it was like just the camaraderie that day too was awesome, man.
Yeah.
It was just like,
Yeah,
I was like, yo, SP. Like, I felt like I've known SP for like the longest. We were just talking about music and producers and just everything, life, you know, and Bobito throwing in, like, everybody just, it's cool when a collective of people who are within a certain realm gather and they don't even speak about that.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Wait, they don't speak about what?
About that realm. Like, we don't, you know, like we get together, we're not necessarily talking about just music. You know, like music,
right.
Music is our common interest that brought us all together, but there's so many different things that we can converse about through life, and that's how you know that you're like in the presence of someone that's actually good for you. You know what I mean?
Yes, and when I started following SP on Instagram, this guy would post some, again, back to your posts, and a lot of it is on mental health, which is what we're going to talk about and get into. But man, some of the stuff that you post really kind of stops me in my tracks. And I'm like, oh, and we've exchanged conversations talking about how, you know, some of this content that you post is really, it does stop you in your tracks, and it makes you think twice about, you know, what you're doing and how you're doing it. Yeah. It's a big deal. So thank you for that.
Yes, then thank you.
And so with that, what leads you to putting out those type of posts? And
so it's one of those things where kind of like the conversation that we had right before we started. It's like I never know who could use this little nudge or a little encouragement. It's one of those things where, you know, I read it and I pause and I'm like, I can't be the only one that, you know, that needs to read this right now. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's like, you know what, I'm just going to put it out there. And sometimes I comment on it or I highlight certain things.
Yep.
And it's part of my kind of like paying it forward. And, you know, it's also one of those things where if it's not for you, then it's not for you.
Right.
And that's okay. You know what I mean? I don't expect engagement, right? People that will get something out of it are the ones that it's meant for. So that's the way I kind of look at it.
And I guess that's my next question. What do your DMs look like? Because you do post those things, and I DM you all the time. Like, I really needed to hear this. Do you get a lot of those types of responses of people saying like, man, you know, thank you for posting this. I needed this.
It depends. Usually it's just like likes or, it's usually likes. And then some of it is like, wow. There was one that, I can't remember what it was, but there was somebody that responded and said, I just went through a rabbit hole looking at this person's like content.
Right.
And it's the first time I've engaged with somebody's account like for this long. So I ended up following this account. Wow. You know what I mean? So, and I don't know, like, it's one of those accounts where I don't know them personally, but it's like, and I'm not necessarily promoting other people's accounts, but it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, I know me as a human being, I follow certain accounts like that because they resonate with me, right? So if another human being finds something in what I'm posting and they can take it with them and help them grow as a person, then, you know, I did something to contribute to that person's well-being.
And it just takes one person, right?
It does. Just one person. But you also work in mental health.
I do, yes.
Because I've seen you post, even you get the opportunity to play music for people in your workplace. So that's kind of a big blessing. Can you tell us more about what you do?
Yeah, so I work in staff development. So just kind of a disclaimer, I'm not a licensed therapist, nothing like that. But I do work in staff development at a behavioral health company where I facilitate trainings. So we've got people on staff that are like doctorate level, master's level, and they create these trainings and they train me, and I learn from them, and then I facilitate this training. I give feedback to kind of change the trainings around, and then we train our staff.
Right.
So it's a privilege because you've got these folks who, you know, are PhDs that trust me and the rest of my team to facilitate this training to other folks who are licensed therapists, who are counselors. And, you know, sometimes I'm like blown away that I'm like, okay, this is little old me, right? And I get to like, and I get trusted to like, you know, train these folks. And when I started this job, I was actually on the verge of like hanging up DJing because it was in the middle of the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
And you know, I wasn't at a good place. Like I was on like a burnout kind of place, and something had to go.
So before the pandemic, you were already on the verge of a burnout.
Kind of, yeah. Well, I mean, when the pandemic hit, I was like trying to keep up with everybody who was figuring out how to DJ online. And because, you know, because of everything else, like my job at the time, basically was demanding a lot of my time. And then, of course, I had to take care of the kiddos who were home at school. And that's when I was like, okay,
Oh, yeah. That's
something's got to give, right? And I got frustrated because I'm like thinking, I was like, man, how is everybody figuring this out and not me, you know? And I got angry, and we'll talk about this too, like how I kind of recentered myself as far as like mental health, because I got to a place where I really, really distanced myself from the DJ community that I knew. Like I didn't want to see it anymore. So I unfollowed a lot of people.
Oh, wow. But was it because, as you mentioned, was it because you were seeing that they were going online and you were feeling like, I don't know how I'm going to do this part yet?
It's like I don't, you know, it was, looking back, it was like, it was an unhealthy response because it was almost like it's not their fault that they figured it out, right? You know what I mean? But it's one of those things where, you know, that the whole, I guess, that past experience, like, you know, when, you know, I guess you thinking back as a child, when you, that feeling of getting left out.
Yes.
You know, I was like, well, if you're gonna leave me, I'm gonna take my ball and go home. You know what I mean? Like that type,
that's how you felt.
That's where I went.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I get that.
Until the man, Babito the chef,
Hey,
gotta shout him out,
Bobby.
who, you know, who saw and reached out.
He noticed something.
Yep.
I want to say he does have like some kind of sense, some kind of, I've learned he's a very intuitive person. When I took my break off of social media, it was so strange. On days where I was really feeling low, he would send me a text message. How are you doing? I'm checking in. And I was like, how does he know? But he does, that energy is very much, he's got a radar for that.
Yep. Absolutely. And then I just remember he It's like, hey, come meet me to grab something to eat. So we went and grabbed something to eat. And then, he told me about, an event that it was like, hey, it wouldn't be right. It was an event that they were paying tribute to, our good friend who had passed away in 2018.
Okay.
So it was an event that was a tribute to him, and I was like, hey, it wouldn't be right without you there.
Right.
So, I'm like, man, yeah, that's when I was like, I'm so sorry. Like I don't know what was going on. Well, I did, but I was like, I'm sorry, and thank you, and thank you for like just
Pulling me back in.
pulling me back and knocking sense into me. So, yeah,
It's always good to have a circle like that, right? Like, I experienced something similar to that, but it wasn't. It wasn't because I was going through anything at that time. It was just more so in the realm of I was just tired of everybody. Like I'm not sure if you ever got to this, but when people like everyone does the same thing, right? And when people don't understand the levels to where someone gets to within that profession, right? And then it's just like, oh yeah, I do the same thing, or I started doing, but it's just like where it's like it's been years, like this is something I dedicated myself to the point where it's separated me from my family because it wasn't the choice that they had expected me to take based off of like financial income. Is it going to be okay? Like, I'm sure you've heard it like your entire career as a DJ is just like, hey, it's not a real job. It's not feasible. It's not adequate enough for you to be able to make a living or provide for your family, right? So it's just like, man, when I hear people like, oh yeah, I do the same thing, it's just like, I just got tired of hearing all that, right? So I started just doing it for myself, and I didn't do any more events.
So you shut down too?
I did shut down. And then same thing, like what Bobito was for you, was actually Rickie Lee, my brother DJ Hex, and DJ Severe. And just what they built within here, right? And all the stuff that they do, there's sprinkles of other DJs. And like some renowned DJs being like, why are you not, bro? You know,
Right. Why aren't you doing this?
Yeah, after a while, it's just like, damn, why am I not? Like now, I feel like a fool because if these people are telling me I could, why am I not? You know, and it's just like we need people like Bobito and Rickie and Hex and Severe to push us to be able to get comfortable again and see what our worth is, whether it's within the music industry or just anything in life. We have to have a nice tight circle where people will always have your back, whether it's good, bad, all the ugly shit, because when everything's nice and pretty, we all get to like admire it together, right?
And actually, one of our viewers right now, Omi Torres, says the sanctity of a circle is prime. So, yes. So I know we had talked earlier this week about what our topic was going to be like. What was it? And usually we kind of, figure that out. But it was really last minute today because I think just a couple of hours before I text you and I said I want to talk about men and mental health. Raina had an incredibly interesting day today. A very close friend of ours, very, very, very close friend of ours. He was in a situation where he wasn't feeling well. And, let us know that it had been a couple of days that he was feeling very anxious and that, his whole left side of his body was hurting. So I'm in the dentist chair trying to do this, and I'm telling Ray, he needs help. We need to get him help right now because this is not, and this is a warning. This is a red flag, and I appreciated that, he reached out to us and addressed that. But I've learned this year, just this year alone, how men don't talk about what they're going through, what they're dealing with. So besides that dear friend of ours who had that, and all of us collectively, and going back to the sanctity of a circle is prime, we all work together as a team to get him where he needed to be so that he can, take care of himself. So he could get to where he needed to be. But with that, I learned, Severe, I've been his manager for a few years now. he's also struggled with it. We've been in back-to-back shows where after one show he's feeling pressure in his chest, and I'm driving him over to urgent care after a full like 16-hour day, and then learning, Ray on his podcast, shout out to the Sam and Ray podcast, where he's telling his wife that he never shared his feelings of depression because she was feeling it, and how could he go ahead? I'm really just I don't even know what the feeling is to express how discouraged and sad I am that the men in my circle don't have or struggle with the ability to communicate or to get help vulnerably, like to be able to say like, fuck, I need help, like help.
Yeah.
That really shook me today, especially because our friend in particular, that it really, we're not getting any younger. And actually that the opposite of your case, right, where you saw everybody online, this friend of ours went really hard online, Instagram and Facebook and streaming on Twitch. He went hard and didn't stop for 3 years. And we realized, like, Jesus, he hasn't had a break for that same reason, that it's like, wait a minute, this is my livelihood. How the hell am I going to make a living when they've just shut everything down? And he went so hard that here we are now, just in complete exhaustion and not operable anymore.
It's almost like a gift and a curse, right? Because in that description of what you just explained, there's also what SP was going through. And obviously everybody individually, we all go through things differently. But this situation could have been a product of what you were missing.
Right.
And I'm a firm believer that in time things will happen when it's supposed to happen, right? Like, these things need to happen. And along the way, if we ever try to create our own course, while our story and our destiny is written, we will be pushed off of the course that we try to create to try to get back onto the course that you're supposed to be on. So it's just like, even though would you say you built like an animosity towards the collective of people that you were looking at, like, well, how did they get it and I don't get it? Like, there's some, I would assume for me that there would have been like a slight bit of animosity. Like, why can't I figure it out?
I wouldn't say animosity. I mean, there was a level of resentment.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Because exactly that, right? It's like, I know I'm capable, right?
Oh, yes.
And, but why? But at the same time, it's like, was that resentment warranted? Because it's like, again, like, it's not their fault that they figured it out, right? And it's also not my fault that I couldn't figure it out. It just is what it was.
And
it was what it was.
And
right?
it's just within its timing. And like I say, like, it just, that wasn't your time for it to be, right? And I think that's just how it works. But going back to like the side of like the mental health, because that is not just like given what we went through recently with anybody in our lives, really, but just like in general, like, I wouldn't say it's a trend, right? Because
Mental health?
Yeah,
I feel like it has been presented as a trend now, because this was not a thing before.
Well, I think so. A trend is something that comes and goes, right? I don't think that this is something that's ever going to go. Where I think the trend is where how people use it, right? To say that, like, if they're not really going through these things, but they're trying to figure out a way to get out of a situation, they could use mental health.
Oh, but that's abuse everywhere. Yeah,
right.
People will find a way to abuse that. Yeah,
I believe that's where the trend would be. Like, for someone to say, "Oh, it's because I got mental health." Like, we look at some of the criminal activity, right?
Yeah.
And we look at, not to bring up race, but if we look at like a race thing, like, if one race does it, they get no like vouch for that.
Which
as
ethnicity are you talking about?
opposed to another race
Ethnicity?
doing it. It's a mental health issue.
Right.
So there's
see.
things like that divide it in what you said, like, it's in an abusive manner, right? But I think it's something that I'm glad has come to light, right? Like, because I've dealt with it myself. Again, like Rickie said, like, I've never I never expressed it to anybody until it was on that episode with my wife, and she was talking about her depression.
Yeah.
And I just like, I didn't know how to express it to her. And I think, again, it goes back to timing. Like, hey, when you were going through what you were going through, I was going through it too. I just didn't know how to go through it and tell you about it. Because if you're going through it, how can I make your situation worse knowing what triggers you? Right? So it's just like, it's always the timing. Because this was...
And I'm laughing because I was shocked. As soon as I heard that episode, I called both of them. And I was like, are you seriously just finding out about this, that your husband was depressed when you were depressed? Like, is this this is really how you just found out? And it was.
And it took like 10, almost 11 years for that to come to light. And even at that, my wife was just like, I want to cry. I was like, don't. Because now we can talk about it.
Yes.
Yeah. Now we can go back and forth and pick it apart. And I think when you have that type of dialogue and it's healthy and you understand that it's a timing thing, right? Nobody is a victim within that conversation, and no one is approaching it as such, right? What's your takeaway on situations similar to that? I know, like, again, like for you, just stepping out and stepping back in was different. But did you, in that process, ever feel like there was a form of depression, like, kind of building?
I wouldn't say depression. So when I was thinking about, how to approach like today's topic, and how do I talk about it in a way that is universal, right? That people will understand. And as you were like talking, I was thinking about the hierarchy of needs,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Basic needs, right?
Basic needs.
And just FYI for people who are familiar with the hierarchy of needs, people, you might have heard it referred to as Maslow's hierarchy. Maslow stole it from the Blackfoots.
Wait, from who?
The Blackfoot Indians, the Blackfoot Native Americans. He stole the concept while he was there researching.
Of course.
So he stole the concept. So the Blackfoot Native Americans didn't call it the hierarchy of needs, but they conceptualized it, and he took it and did not credit. So whenever I train or whenever I refer to it, I just call it the hierarchy of needs. I don't
refer to him.
I don't refer
Got
to
it.
Yeah. So, but you see, like, you got the bottom part, right? Physical, right? Usually it's like food, food, clothing, shelter, like that. And then you've got safety. You've got belonging. You've got self-esteem, and you've got self-actualization, right? So I think it's important to have at least a foundational understanding of basic needs, because those are what drives behavior.
Okay.
Right? Because now, understanding that if somebody behaves a certain way, you can ask, okay, what need isn't getting met right now? Right? Like, for example, somebody who's meeting their upper level needs, right? So self-actualization, they're living the dream job, house, family, whatever, laid off. Now there's a threat to the lower level needs. All of a sudden, they act on it, right? You see people stealing. You see people getting violent, right?
I see.
So because now the lower level needs are threatened. So I need to provide for my family, right? So now I think one of the best ways that I've learned to interact with people, and especially family, especially my kids, is like if something is happening, if I'm seeing them like showing some challenging behavior, like instead of addressing the behavior, it's like, okay,
What do you need?
what need isn't getting met right now?
It's missing.
Right? So maybe it's belonging, maybe it's connection, right? That like belonging, connection. So it's like, okay, like I think of my son. I was like, hey, come here real quick. Sit down right here. How you doing? I give a physical connection. It's like you didn't like it when I said you can't play it, huh? That's what it seemed like, huh? Yeah. I didn't like that. I want to play some more. It's like, well, so instead of addressing the behavior, I validate. I was like, you didn't like that. Right? So even think about it with, kind of like how you responded to your wife. It's like, no. it's okay now because now we can talk about it.
Right.
Right. So you validated that, hey, you saw that she felt uncertain about something, but you validated. So she, in that scenario right there, she had the need to be validated, right? When you're validated, you feel safe. So you're meeting the need for her to feel safe. She needed to feel safe in that moment by her saying, hey, you don't have to cry because we can talk about it. Now she feels safe. So the need was uncovered, it was met, and you didn't have to deal with the behavior. You know what I mean?
So in the process of everything that goes on, you actually, you're assessing,
Right.
which is actually a really crucial thing that a lot of us don't do. We don't assess, right? I think it ends up being like almost like we don't. It's almost like not listening. You hear what I'm saying, but you're not necessarily listening to what I'm saying, and because you're not actually listening, you're not taking the time to assess the situation, right? Because there's verbal, like the audible version of being able to assess it, but then like he was saying, like there's the body language, there's the like if the shoulders drop and you see like just a little slight slump and you're just like,
Right.
oh no, we're not going there. That's not. We don't have to go in that route. We're actually, it's good, and like you said, it builds that comfort. So it's just reading the body language, hearing the tones. Through all that, you're assessing the situation before you decide to react to anything. How long is that process for you?
It all depends. I always say get curious, right?
Oh my God, yes.
When you see something, like I have a teenager, right? And she is, I would consider, and again, we, sometimes as parents, we kind of label, not just our kids but kids, like the good kid, bad kid, right? So I've learned to identify kids as high needs and low needs. So high needs kids are very expressive, right?
Yeah.
And low needs kids, not that they don't need
This is
needs
gonna
met,
make me cry already.
but low needs, children with low needs are usually the ones that are pretty independent, right? But you have to be more intentional with checking in with them to see, hey, you good?
Because it's easy to fall off with those kids.
Right.
Yeah, it's easy to be like, nah, they're good.
Yeah, and it's the high needs kids that are like always on your tail. I was like, hey, can you make me this? Can I get this? Can I, but I think of, a scenario that I imagine that most parents of teenagers might go through, right? Kid comes home, slams the door. I hate my teacher right now. I don't want to go back to school, whatever, right? And then I can imagine the response like, hey, what are you doing slamming that door?
Yeah.
We don't slam doors around here. Get up to your room, right? Yeah. So you're addressing the behavior, but there's a need behind that. Like there's a need behind that. And get curious means like, whoa, hey, what happened?
Right.
What's going on? What happened? Right? And I was like, well, blah, 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 blah. I was like, hey, that sounds tough, right? You're just reflecting back, right? You're not passing any judgment on what happened. You're not taking any sides. You're just hearing what they're hearing, and you're just hearing what they're saying, right? And you're just responding to it, right? Because again, another thing when it comes to the human condition is like brain development. And this is something that's been super helpful when interacting with, not just children, not just teenagers, but people in general. So one of the things that we use at work is the hand model of the brain, right? So right here, the thumb is like the amygdala. This is responsible for emotions. This is like our primitive part of the brain.
Okay.
Right. This is the part of the brain that responds to stress, and the front part takes. This is what takes time to develop. So this is like the frontal lobe. This is where you decision making, all of that, right? So when somebody gets triggered into fight or flight and the stress response kicks in, literally flip their lid. Right? So they come offline. So like when kids, especially little kids, I was taught a long time ago to, when a kid starts whining or, right, use your words, right? But they're starting to come offline. They can't.
You can't use your words.
Can't use your words, right? So when I learned that, when I shifted that, okay, what do I need to do to get them back online, right? So it's the same with humans, right?
And that's dependent on the person,
right?
Yeah.
And think about it. If you grew up, or if you were exposed to toxic environments, traumatic situations, you're constantly teetering, right? So you never stay online.
You're like this.
Right, exactly. So you're easily flip your lid, right? You're easily either on the verge or right there, right? So this is constantly on alert. So it's and I think looking back at my my experience in the pandemic, that's where I was, because we were all in a very heightened state, right? And coupled with things that I never addressed in the past, like that kind of like,
It's like fast forwarded
right.
everything. We're dealing with
so
this
now. I'm like,
Oh my God.
You explaining that now, it makes things a lot more easier for me to understand. So like one of the things that Rickie always mentions is like how I'm composed and I'm calculated about a lot of the things that we do, and right, like, so in a lot of situations, many situations, she confides in me, right? So it's just like, because she knows that there's a process that I go through, but I always tell her, I said, like, I'm like that with everybody except my kids. But you explaining that now makes sense why I'm like that with my kids. Like my kids, they got my lid up, bro. of all people, like I'm good with being like meticulous with the things that I'm doing, and like this is why we should do it. And I offer the contrary a lot of times, just so that people always get a broader sense of whatever the scenario may be. But when it comes to my kids, it's like, pah! So that
there's something that I heard online this week that like kind of stopped me on my tracks. So he said that if your kid is, if you're seeing some challenging behavior in your kid and you're feeling triggered, imagine that you're 80 years old, right? And you are given an opportunity to go back into time, but this is the moment that you're being given to go back into time, right?
So like it's like you gotta reflect it,
right? So because you're 80 years old, you're like, sometimes I'm sure like
the wisdom kicks in.
It's like man, I would give anything for time with my kid at this age, right? So I think I think mental health and with men, and I think with anything, I think it's so important to have that understanding of just that foundation of like, hey, our needs are universal. We all have them. Right? We all have them, and we do what we do to meet those needs. Like whatever we have resources for. Like, for example, I do a training for folks that work at a behavioral health urgent care, right? So the staff there sees clients that have the potential to be violent, right? So one of the activities that we do is like, hey, I want you to write down as many things as you can that you do to meet these needs, safety, physical, all of this. Like we go through the whole hierarchy. And then look at that. I was like, look at what you have access to meet these needs. Now think about the clients that you're working with. What access do they have to meet these needs? That's all they're trying to do. Yes, I'm not saying that violence is justified. I'm not saying that aggression is justified. But there are needs, legitimate needs that are being met.
There's a reasoning for it.
Right. So when it comes to like for example, even though it took a long time for you to, to have that conversation with your wife, there was a need behind that too, right? Because
And a lot of times you don't know what that
Right.
need is.
it was probably to feel safe. Like you wanted both of you wanted each other to feel safe.
Yeah. In that moment, yeah.
Right.
But generally, like how the topic came up was just like, I don't remember. Like I would have to actually go back and listen to the conversation and exactly like pinpoint why and how we got to that point of the conversation. But that again goes to what I always explain. Like that's just time working itself out, and you realizing that if in time, like it's cliche to say it, but within due time,
Right.
it's all going to work out, right? And nobody wants to hear that though, because especially in the society that we live in, everything is instant.
Mm-hmm.
You got instant coffee, instant oatmeal, instant
Deliveries.
ramen. Like everything is like, and
Instant
deliveries.
deliveries.
Like everything is instant, and we're just safe to say we all become fucking lazy. You know what I mean? Like it's just we
gonna be
want
Wallies.
we want everything just handed to us. And there's nothing wrong with it, but that type of thought process of needing things at the moment doesn't allow everyday people, and I say everyday people because you have, and I'll call it the education, like working with these doctors and all these people that you work with that are at such a high level of it. You're educated in that field, right? And normal people aren't, so they don't understand the breakdown. They don't understand the hierarchy that you explained.
Right.
So the instant gratification pretty much just like supersedes any thought process of assessing any type of situation for us.
Which is interesting because there was a time where I was working for Mi Vida, and they're a small, no, actually, they're pretty big. They're a boutique, and everything is handmade. All of their products are, handmade. So it takes a minute to produce these things, right? And it's all over the website. Like, hey, it takes, 14 to 16 days to get these things done every time you buy something. So I was helping with the customer service, and man, like people would be so upset if they didn't get a response on something or didn't get things right away. And I remember telling her, she's a woman-owned business, like it's really tough to compete with Amazon, who you can have a package within days. And so that has people in this mindset, to your point, that it's like, I want this now, I need this now, why can't you do this for me now? And it removes the patience part of like everything. Like everything.
Even business, and
your interactions with people.
I remember for I'll say it was maybe like 2 years ago. I was working on a project, and they wanted me to create like a promo video for this warehouse that was a 3PL company, which at that time, and this is how fast things just switched up, right? Because this was about 2-3 years ago, and that 2-3 years ago it was just Amazon, right? But now you have all these other logistic companies that are offering 3PL services, to where it's just like, if Rickie wanted to start something, like start a brand or start any type of merch line or anything like that, she just has to create an account with this 3PL warehouse, and they store all her stuff, and they ship out all her stuff based off of whatever it is that she has to send out. So it's like, even other people are like gravitating towards how fast we need to, and they're everywhere. Like you look, it's like, damn, why are there so many warehouses? Like the Inland Empire is easily becoming just a pot of just warehouses, right? Like it's either an apartment complex. I think in due time, we're not gonna see any more houses. We're everything's gonna be like townhomes or apartments.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be the norm in due time because of how they have to structure everything. It's almost like I want to say Italy or France, where everything is just stacked up.
Yeah.
Like the roads are tight, but it's because they're just like living on stacks of houses, like apartments. Everything's an apartment. That's normal, and it's crazy that we live in that society. But then,
What's happening in LA already?
yeah, but then it also explains a lot to why there are these mental illnesses and all these things that people go through, the anxiety, all that. Like it's crazy because we don't realize that we're creating it for ourselves.
We are going to be our own destruction. That's already settled and it's done. And I can't remember what documentary I watched where it literally says that. But I do want to check in with our Twitch chat. Thank you everyone again for joining us. We have so I was talking to Ray before you came in and I was like, I want to say DJ SP, but I feel like yes, you're a DJ and that's how I recognize you, right? But what's your take on how people refer to you? Like, what's your preference?
I mean, as far as like, I think the way people call me depends on their level of familiarity with me.
Okay.
Right. So, obviously at home I've got.
We're nowhere near. Like,
Well,
No, we know
we're nowhere near the circle.
we
Ricky.
know the government name. We know the
no.
government name, right? But I met you as SP, right?
Right.
And as DJ SP. But now I lost where I was going with this.
Well, no, like
I was introducing you to our Twitch folks. Yes.
yeah. So DJ SP actually stands for my full birth certificate name, David John Salcedo Perez.
Whoa. The DJ part too?
Yeah.
Yeah,
David John.
See, so he explained it on his Twitch when he first started coming up on his
Somebody
Twitch.
asked me,
And he explained it, but he's as fast as he said it. That's as fast as
I
he
feel
said it there.
not guilty at all now for
So
calling
it's
you
David
DJ SP.
John Salcedo Perez.
yeah, it's my initials.
So DJ SP.
And he is on Twitch. And one of my favorite things about his sets on Twitch are the questions that you ask folks. You always have a prompt and it gets the chat going, whatever question it is that you have. It's one of my favorite things. And the reality has become is there's so much interaction that happens on Twitch now or on chats. Like relationships exist on Twitch, which going back to what I was saying. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. All of the comments on the chat, they're very insightful and very helpful. And we're healing. We're all healing in the chat today. But I do want to go back to everything that you were mentioning because as you were talking about your teenagers, in my head as I was intently listening to what you were saying, I couldn't help but to...
I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh.
It's because I said intently listening? Is that what it was?
Because Vinny says he calls you Papa Kiss.
Yeah.
Wait, why does he call him Papa Kiss?
It's a reference to Joshua Weissman. It's like a YouTube chef that we both watch.
Oh.
So he just like the way he just like Papa Kiss like the
It's because they're chef extraordinaires over here. This dude's a fucking baking king.
Wait,
Vinny's over here.
and
Vinny makes his own bread before he makes a sandwich,
That's
right?
ridiculous, Vinny. And I love a good sandwich. Like sandwiches are like my favorite.
But back to your reflection of teens.
Because it and there's a point to this, right? You're talking about teenagers, right? And I couldn't help but to think about all those times that I did yell at my kids, like, why are you slamming doors up in this house? Like, but because I'm coming home from a toxic work environment and I'm just as fucked up as whatever they got. And no one's asking me what my needs are. So it's like this vicious cycle. But at the same time that I'm thinking about, like, dang, how did I misstep with my kids, right? I was also thinking about my own youth, like my own, teenage years and what I was allowed to say or not say or what I was being asked or not asked. So it's a beautiful thing. And again, I go back to that's why I love following your page because a lot of the stuff that you post does have to do with your inner child and healing that part. Because if you just heal your little baby Rickie, then you might be able to have a completely different relationship with your kids. And I know that my kids get irritated all the time because despite and I say limited because I do feel like there's a lot more that I could learn about how to address them, right? I do have dialogue with them. We do have very open conversations with them. And they, in turn, have, very frank commentary about how I deal with them because again, social media has all these resources now,
Right.
where they're like, "Mama, you're doing this or you're doing that," and I'm like, "Okay, what?
But see, that's a good thing.
What's
And
gaslighting? I didn't know what gaslighting was."
I've actually witnessed like these dialogues between. I want to say all your kids, even your son. Like it's kind of refreshing, right? Because one of the things that like we're all shitty parents. That's just how I look at it. Like, especially to your first, right? Your firstborn, it's a first for everything. It's the first time your child's gonna do this or that, and it's gonna be the first time you have to learn how to react to it. Not learn how to react, but that reaction's gonna be different. So your second and third, or however many kids you have, everyone after that child gets the better version of you. And I always tell my son that.
Well, let's reframe that. Because one of the things that I've learned over the years is thinking strength based.
Okay.
Right.
Thinking strength.
Yeah.
based.
So think of your strengths instead of deficits. So, like, I understand what you say when you say we're all shitty parents, right? But let's take a reframe, because I think language matters, especially for ourselves, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So instead of me saying, I was like, man, I'm a shitty parent, I was like, I'm still learning as a parent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Amen.
You know what I mean?
It's how we talk to ourselves.
So shift it a little bit, because at the end of the day, that's part of our.
You see what you
did?
You spoke it into existence.
It's because you hit me, fool.
So I really think language matters, because when we soften our language on ourselves, it becomes something that we speak to other people.
It becomes our truth.
Right.
Well, it becomes a pattern also. Like it's something that you learn to start building. Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because your wife just commented, "Oh, got nervous there, huh, Raymond?" And I think that's perfect because
Shout out to my wife.
yes, Sammy Rochelle. Ray has, and again, we've had some intense conversations about parenting. And he has said that, like, yeah, it's tough on the first one and the second one. And I never stopped him from saying, "You're a shitty parent," because I'm thinking too, fuck, I'm a shitty parent too. Like, how have I messed up my children? But you and I just talked about earlier today, the voices that we have in our heads. SP, I literally had to envision, and I had this conversation the other day with Severe, because we were talking about the things we tell ourselves and how we tell ourselves that so much over and over again, we start to believe it, right? And then you believe the negative things that you say about yourself. I had to literally imagine myself in a little emoji of myself sweeping away. Don't judge me.
No.
But every time I would have a negative thought, or I would say something bad about myself, I would imagine this little person just with a broom, like sweeping this away, like, get out of here, and talk to myself like and I was about to say like a crazy person, but that's a stigma too that I need to stop saying.
Ironically, your response would have been my response.
Correct.
To her, or even to my wife, or anybody.
Correct.
Like, right? So it is something that, like, I worked on with building with other people and making sure that we know how to speak to other people in a certain way, right? But we don't do it for ourselves.
Our inner hater is the worst.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you know that, because then it comes with those conversations. It comes with the dialogue. Like, again, like with my wife, when she was going through school, I would always tell her, like, it doesn't even matter if you like when you finish, if you go in the field that you studied. Like, that doesn't make you a failure. That doesn't, like, don't let that get to you. Just finish it and see where it takes you. Because again, it's time. Time will take its course, and it will tell you where you need to be. So these are like the thing, like the same way you're saying it, like, man, like, don't call yourself a shitty parent. Let's not do that to ourselves. I would say the same thing, like, no, you're not a crazy person. But then in a sarcastic way, I probably would be like, well, are you crazy? If you're crazy, then you're crazy.
And it goes back to some of the comments in the chat where Omi Torres says, like, we don't have manuals for this. We do not come with a manual. And Erica is saying, how can we expect ourselves to be perfect at something we've never done before?
Right.
But we're so quick to trash ourselves and be like, you're messing all this up, instead of being compassionate with ourselves. And
do you think a lot of it, and again, in conversations that I have with my wife is sometimes like we get so self-conscious about the things that we think other people are going to see in us, because those often are the things that we look at other people doing, right? Like if you think that I'm a shitty parent, it's probably because I'm out here wondering why you're a shitty parent. You know, like it's just like, so like your mind starts playing a game with you where you're just like,
Yeah.
Well, this is something that I heard a while ago, and it's really caused me to reflect. Since it's like, do people are the people that constantly refuse to ask for help? Is it because they judge people when they ask for help? You know what I mean?
yeah.
So, I'm not saying that everybody is that way, but like, do the people that are just so, no, I don't need any help, is it because deep down they're judging other people?
They're like, look at this guy asking for help.
And it's without context, right? Because we don't
know the truth.
We do look at people, but we don't actually know the scenarios. Like I said, we don't know the truth to it. Why is this person asking for help? Like if we're looking at someone and judging them because they're asking for help, like how do we not know that they've actually exhausted every option that they can before they ask for that? But in our head, man, you're weak, you're asking for help. And now because I said that about this person, I can't show that I'm weak. And I'm not going to ask for help.
And let me tell you, that friend that we were talking about earlier that we were helping out, he asked for help today. And I told him, dude, I'm proud of you. Like, thank you for that you trusted us, that you're reaching out, that you're exercising your voice to say that you need help. We're tired as hell. We're going to have a long ass weekend, but we're going to show up for you because we know that one day when we need your help, because now the fact that he asked for help, it kind of encourages me to ask for help. And it encourages me to say, damn, I'm in a safe space now where now mutually amongst all of us, we have this opportunity to express when we need help. And I'm very grateful for that. And I'm going to emphasize that to him as well because it's important.
It goes back to, I know Vinny was being funny, but it goes back to we're not perfect. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we try to portray this image, right? But it's just like your true friends and your true circle understands that you're not perfect. It's okay.
So many of us want people to see the highlight reels, and they don't want to see the behind the scenes. Like, we don't want people to see the behind the scenes.
Like how many times it took you to make the reel. Right. You're like, damn it. How many times, you know what I mean? You just want them to see the finished product and not the struggle to what's going on.
And to my point that I appreciate that Ray and I went through something recently where I saw a vulnerable side of him, and I was like, man, it was so nice to see that, because I do hold, and this is the other thing I thought too, I do hold Ray in high regard. Like, he's someone that I respect and that I trust and that I rely on, as a good source of help and support and reliability, right? But I also realized, like, okay, well, I put him, without even asking, put him on this pedestal, right? Because I'm like, okay, here's a good point of reference to a solid human being that I feel safe with and that I can count on, right? And so because of that, I almost, when I see that he's an actual human being and he does have feelings, not that you don't have feelings, I know you have feelings, but when he lets them show.
It didn't show like, when you pushed me and I knocked over the mic.
I was like, oh my God, thank you. Because it makes me feel like, because I always feel like I'm the nutcase of the group. I always feel like I'm the one always falling apart, always complaining, always overwhelmed by life. So it's nice when my circle of friends
your circle of support
show their vulnerabilities and show and expose their worries and their concerns. And that's what's actually helped me feel safe, because I can now feel safe around these people, where outside of that, I have to be put together for everybody and their mother all the time, 24/7, 7 days a week.
So would you say I was perfect in my vulnerability? Damn, I'm good.
Get the hell out of here.
Damn, I'm good.
Okay, wait.
SP told me it's all about how I use my words.
It is.
It's all about how I use my words. So I was perfect in my vulnerability.
1,000%. But here's the thing.
I'm 100 for 100 on the perfectionism.
You see?
In your eyes.
Now this happens.
There we go, baby.
now this happens. But
Put
I
that
want to
on
go
the
back to
board.
the cookie situation.
Yeah.
Because I found myself having a conversation again with Severe and his mental health struggles and what he's got going on and how we all have this stuff going on and how we don't stop, right? It's just go, 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 work, 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 work. You're trying to hit a goal. You're trying to hit this target that you completely forget how to be just a regular, tangible human being. And I was like, dude, what? Like, grow a plant. Like, plant something. Get your hands dirty. Like, cool. Yes, you're on this trajectory and you're going someplace, and we're all going someplace. But sometimes the most basic things, I recently realized, I see my mom. My mom religiously will come home and she'll cook for herself. She'll pack her lunch for the next day. She prepares her food. I've recently realized that's an act of self-care. Because you're thinking about what you're going to eat the next couple of days. Because I'm looking at myself going to work, tired, hungry, snacking on everything because I didn't pack anything, because I didn't prepare, I didn't cook for myself. So I said, Jesus, that time my mom takes to do that, that means something. That's important.
So here's what I have to say about that. So being on the go, especially like folks that have to, right?
Right.
It's part of their daily, right?
Yeah.
It's easy. It's so easy to rely on aftercare and call it self-care.
Fuck.
Right? So there's self-care and there's aftercare. Self-care is
aftercare.
preventive. Aftercare is restorative. So aftercare is something that you do. I had a bad day. I'm going to go get some sushi. Right? But self-care is something like what you said. Hey, grow a plant. Take care of a plant. That, if that is something that fills your cup, right? So, because if you are on the go, right? So imagine a car, right? Imagine a car. You got to fill up, right? You got to fill up, and when you are working, as a DJ, even if you're not necessarily working directly with human beings, you are working with other human beings. You're providing a service, right? So in a sense, you're pouring into other people.
And that's an exchange of energy that's draining.
Absolutely. So, and you cannot pour from an empty cup. So it's one of those things. Self-care is what constantly keeps your cup filled, right? So, and then aftercare is if all of a sudden your cup gets drained like that. And then aftercare is like, okay, I need a quick fill. So, but if you are already running low and then you experience something that drains that rest of you, right? And aftercare is just it's a quick fix. So, so for me, that's something that I have to remind myself of is, okay, am I really practicing self-care, or is this aftercare that I'm calling self-care?
Oftentimes, aftercare ends up being
Expensive.
well, yeah, because then
it becomes a crutch.
because then it's just like comfort,
Right?
It's the comfort, like, oh man, you know what? I'm gonna and we had this conversation the other day because I was just like, man, don't judge me. I'm snacking,
Right.
I'm snacking, like,
Yes.
and it was just like snack after snack after snack, but it's because I didn't prepare myself to not be
But
in that.
we've been
that state.
actively trying. We've been actively trying to prepare for when we do shows and stuff like that. We have, but I had no idea about aftercare. Had no clue that was even a thing. I love massages. Like, I'm down for a good massage. And my my massage therapist, we don't even speak the same language, but this little old man knows my body. Like, he knows how stressed out I am. And I realized, you're just getting all the aftermath. Like, literally all the aftermath of all my stress, of all my anxieties, of my tiredness, a complete empty body that I'm now expecting you to restore completely. I had no clue that was a thing.
Well, I know.
Damn.
With my wife's cousin. So my wife's cousin, she does. She's I don't want to butcher what she studied, but she's a masseuse, right? But she does it in different forms, like holistically, all the different various forms. But there's days where she's explained it to me where she's just like, they need the detox day.
Oh God, I
because
imagine.
because there is that like exchange of energy, and it's just like, they're sucking all that out of you, and it's just
Yeah.
like they go home with all that heaviness, and it's just and it made sense when she said it, because myself, when I'm at the shop, like cut after cut,
Yeah, you guys are therapists too. Counselor.
cut after cut, it's just a different conversation about a different thing, and it's just like you have to train your mind to turn on and turn off for each one, right? Like one guy could be going through a death in his family, and the next guy is going through a breakup, and the next guy just got a job promotion, and the next guy's having a kid.
So there's a term for that, and I know and you can use this term, you know, you can apply this term to what you're experiencing. So for folks that work in behavioral health, counselors and therapists, what we call it's called vicarious trauma, where you are hearing other people's trauma, but you are experiencing it, right? So it turns into a cycle where if you absorb enough of that vicarious trauma, it can turn into compassion fatigue, which means you become numb, right? It's your body's response to that. Because think about it, if somebody is experiencing firsthand trauma, their fight or flight, sometimes they shut down, right? So it's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Compassion fatigue.
Compassion fatigue. You get tired. Your body gets tired of hearing these stories, and you begin to lose empathy, right? And it's a real thing because it's your body's natural response, because your body is designed to survive, right? So if your brain sees this as a threat, like, hey, I'm starting to feel traumatized by these stories.
Oh my God.
So I'm just gonna kind of like
Block it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm hearing it, but my body's not gonna feel it anymore.
You know what? That makes sense, because there's times where I don't even talk back to my clients. It's usually like, how we doing today? How are we gonna get the cut? This is how you like it? Cool. And it's just like 30 minutes. Do my thing. And that's it. And sometimes I feel bad, because it's just like, I try to tell people too, like, look,
Damn, compassion.
in the different fields that I'm in, it goes back to what you were saying. I'm dealing with so many different people and so many different emotions and things that were just like the transitions between everything at some point. It does feel like fatigue. It's just like, you know what? I'm not going to talk to you today. But to them, sometimes I think it's like, oh, he's just being an ass, or like, what's wrong with this fool? It's just like, look, dude, I could cut anywhere from 50 to 60 people in a week, and this is like,
imagine a blender, right? Like you're like,
the more
it gets intertwined, right?
Yeah.
So for people like our company is contracted with LA County Department of Mental Health, so we serve a lot of families and youth that are underserved, right? So so there are a lot of folks that have experienced trauma, so that's why we emphasize the whole element of self-care. And because it can happen, the worst case is you begin to feel like, dang, where do my problems end and where do theirs begins? Because it gets so intertwined and it becomes like this emotional blender. And if you're not careful, you don't have to be a therapist to experience it, and it doesn't even have to be like you as a barber. It could be with
it just be you as a person who's a confidant to
right,
many.
exactly, right. So and sometimes we feel guilty for setting boundaries for ourselves, like. You know what I mean? Like, but I think it's okay. I was like, sometimes if you don't have the capacity and you're aware of that, give yourself permission to tell the person, it's like, hey, can I give you a call? Like, like if you sense that it's not like an emergency, like you said today, it was like you sense it was an emergency, right?
Right.
So even if you were already kind of like at capacity, you're like, I need to like step in and help. But if you make, it's like, hey, would it be okay if we have this conversation like tomorrow? Because I'm gonna be at a better capacity to like hear.
You know what?
Listen to
one person that I have practiced that with is this one. Only because a lot of times like it is that like I'm at the shop and I'm dealing with this, and then it's just also a caring of wanting to make sure that my attention is solely on what she has to say or what she needs to express, right?
Which we've learned where I'll just dump everything out and be like, just put a pin on this. Like, just know that I know you can't talk about this right now, but we got to address this later. Like, we'll deal with this later.
And even with my wife, like, I try to, like, it comes off sarcastic, but it's like, do you want me to respond? Or am I?
No,
like,
but that level of directness is necessary.
Because then too, like, now I will know how much of attention is required, right? Because if you just need me to listen, then I just gotta listen and remember. But if you want me to respond, then I gotta listen, assess, and then go about the process of how we're gonna go about this dialogue. But you're like pinpointed on that like perfectly, because it's just so much of all that going on, of the back and forth.
And again, it takes so much practice. Like, and you never know how the other person is going to respond. And, you know, I think of my 9-year-old, right? Like, you know, like, he's excited to tell me something, but I'm in the middle of something, right? And I have to get this particular thing done. And, you know, I have to tell him, I was like, hey, I can see that you're really, really excited about what you want to tell me, and I want to hear it, and I want to hear it well. So let me finish this. Give me 5 minutes. And let me hear it. You know what I mean? So you just kind of validate, but it's like you're prepping. But with that took so much practice. Like
the first part, I can see you're really excited about this. That's what I need to practice.
And the thing is with me,
likewise.
You know, how many times, you know, before would I be just like, not now.
Right.
Like, can't you see I'm in the middle? It's like, that still happens.
And that,
you know what I mean?
But that goes back to what you're saying. It's the wording. Like, the wording is very important, right? Like, I've caught myself doing that with my daughter. Damn. Like, my daughter is just like an explosion of expressions, right? Like, as soon as she leaves school, and the minute I ask, how was your day? She doesn't care that, like, I'm reading an email or I'm reading messages for events and this and that. She's just like, you ask me a question, boom, here we go. And she just spills it all out. And at some point, I detach because I'm like, oh, shit. She's still talking, but it's kind of like, but it's one of those things where it's just like, if I would, it also is my fault because I shouldn't have asked in that moment, knowing that I'm busy or that I got something that's occupying me to where I'm not solely 100% on the conversation that's going to take place.
So now, like, for me, what helps with that is, you know, how can you get specific with the question, right? So like, for example, kid comes home, hey, who'd you sit with at lunch today?
Yeah.
Mm.
And then they can be specific. Oh, yeah, I sat with so. It's like, oh, cool. Or, hey, did anything funny happen at school today?
I've tried that.
Like, oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So that way, you have an expectation of what to answer. Like, and then they know that, hey, that's all Dad wants. That's all Dad wants to hear. It's like, cool. It's like, all right, let's talk some more later. Let me get back to these. You know what I mean? So, you know, and again, you know, I don't want to come off as like this, like, expert, but it's like all of these things and tools that I've learned, I'm still putting into practice.
That's the thing, is there's constant education.
Right.
And we speak about that all the time.
Continuous improvement.
It doesn't matter what field you're in. You could be a carpenter, you could be a barber, you could be in retail and just be like, there's constant improvement, right? And you can't be complacent, because when you become complacent, you become lazy, and when you become lazy, mistakes end up happening. But it's just like,
I feel guilty now. I'm lucky that my youngest child, like how you're saying, like what I just learned, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to insert this part. Hey, I know you're excited about this. That just blew my mind right now, because she'll come to me and she'll tell me, I know you're really busy right now and you're in the middle of something, but I really need a moment to talk to you. Now what I'm dealing with is the guilt that my 16-year-old is the one who has to identify that, is the one identifying how to correctly, how to safely speak to me. That embarrasses me. I feel guilty, like, look at your kid, like, you don't even know how to come at your kid, but they know how to come at you. Look at it. Oh, man, Lord have mercy.
Here's the thing you got to understand. It goes back to what, as P was saying, like, you have to have compassion for yourself, right? You have to be able to be like, it's okay, because the thing is, at the end of the day, your child is a reflection of your leadership, right? She acknowledges these things and she's comfortable with approaching you in this way because you are the leader. So she's learned a lot of what she's going about from you.
Right. Doesn't
necessarily mean that you put into practice every single time and in every encounter you guys had together. But I could safely say that your 16-year-old daughter is not a normal 16-year-old person.
Well, and see, and what you can do, like when that happens, is like thank her. It's like, hey, thank you for acknowledging that I'm in the middle of something. Mm-hmm. That's thank you. Like, so that way it removes the guilt, because it's like, it's not about feeling guilty, and I hear you, because man,
because I feel like they deserve so much more. It's like,
right,
I'm so sorry that I just gave you this terrible version of myself, or that I gave you this tough life. I'm sorry that you deserve the world. You deserve so much, and I can't give you that.
Here's the beautiful thing, though.
That kills me.
Our children will love us no matter what.
Right.
Right? That's the beautiful thing. And another beautiful thing is we can repair. Like, for me, that is something that that was a goal of mine, right? A goal of mine is to practice repair, because I'm going to mess, and I have, like this week, I have messed up, but it's not about perfection as a parent, but it's about our willingness to repair when we mess up, right?
And that's a big struggle for anybody.
It really is.
Because I even look back at the past, right? Oh. And I always tell people, like, man, if there's one thing I regret, and I regret nothing in life, is regret not being a better father to my son when he was younger, right? And it's just like, I wish I could have, but at the same time, like, I feel bad giving myself that, like, you did okay. And like how you're saying, like, you can repair it.
Right.
You can repair it now. And that's one of the things I always tell Rickie. I said, like, with just in general, anything in life, whether it's parenting or anything, you can't fix the past.
Right.
And the more you try to fix the past, everything within your present and your future is just going to, it has no chance of building. It's just going to crumble with everything else, because you're just shoveling.
It's like, I have to say that, I may not have gotten the best parenting advice, like, from people that mean well. Right. Mm-hmm. And I realized that because there are some things I was like, oh my goodness, like my approach with my oldest, when
and your
she
oldest
was younger,
is how old?
14 now.
14.
So now I have the opportunity to kind of shift. Right. Mm-hmm. So, I remember there's one time that, like for me, my primary love language is words, right?
Words of affirmation.
Words of affirmation. So, so at work we talk about, hey, what gift or power do you hold? Bring to a space, bring to work. It's a gift or power because you can use it to hurt or to heal, right? So words, I can use it to heal, but I can use it to hurt.
Yes.
Right. And when I get to a point, that's sometimes how I try to get my point across, especially like, with my kids. And now it took practice to like go back and say, hey, I'm sorry about the way I talked to you. I was like, that wasn't, I should not have said it that way. I was like, no, but, and then, like I said, our kids will love us anyway, because my kid would be like, no, but you were right. I should. Right. I was like, no, even if I was in the right, the way I talked to you was not the way I should have talked to you, and you deserve better than that. So
you explaining that makes all the sense to why, like, people, because like there's some people when they're wrong, they don't know how to apologize.
Right.
Right. But your way of doing it is by speaking, by being able to express that, right? And we look at people and like, why are you trying to buy your way out of this?
Right.
But that's their way of apologizing. Right. And I guess.
Oh yeah, I see that.
I guess you got to kind of take it like, all right, they are sorry. I guess there's levels to it though too.
Well, think about it, because in you know, at the end of the day, we are creatures of instinct, right? So
Right.
if we acknowledge, like for example, I'll give, you know, if my wife is listening, I'm sorry. but I remember when I was working inpatient mental health years ago, before we had kids, right? We were still dating, and we got in a fight, right? So here's me. I work in mental health. I you know, I was like, oh, I'm this like awesome awesome communicator, right?
I got this.
Awesome communicator. And all of a sudden, she's like, I was like, you better stop talking to me like when I'm one of your patients.
Oof.
And then I was like, you better stop acting like one of my patients. And I was like, and it's one of those things where I'm
That
like,
escalated quickly.
I was like, I need to whoa, right? So
That escalated quickly.
because even though I learned how to communicate assertively, it's one of those things that it's not instinctive. Like it's not like assertive communication, being able to communicate effectively, it takes so much work, right? Because we rely on instinct. So either we're passive aggressive, or we're aggressive.
Right.
Right? So those come natural for us. And especially because guess what? Like if we are reliant on instincts,
Everyone's blown away by what you just
I'm
said.
sorry, bro.
All the comments in here are just like,
I'm not gonna lie. I looked down and I seen my wife's name. I was like,
well, if think about where we learn those instincts from.
yeah,
We learn those instincts from those who
the closest.
brought us up.
Yeah,
right.
So
Oh, God.
so at some point I had to make the decision. Once I was aware, I was like, okay, I rely on instinct, right? And I realized, okay, these are the people that I learned these instincts from. So I had to make the decision, am I okay with those instincts? If I'm not, then I gotta do the work, right? It's my responsibility now. Now that I
You
was
know
like,
better. Now you got to
right.
do better.
Right.
Right.
So, and this is just my way. You know, like I said, I love my boss's favorite author and person in the world is Maya Angelou, right? And her favorite quote that she shares all the time is, "When you learn, teach. When you get, give." Right. So, and this is something that I'm kind of taking on myself, right?
Yeah.
So when I learn, teach,
Yes.
right? So it's like I'm learning all of this, and I want to be able to teach that because somebody
help people.
somebody else was willing to teach me this,
Yes.
right? And again, and I want to be like I want people to join me in just the learning process of
Yes.
it, right? And being able to, like, you know, encourage each other and normalize the idea that we are not supposed to be perfect, right? The whole perfection isn't the
there
point.
goes mine.
and you know what? It's like you know, we're all creatives here, right?
Right.
So it's not about perfection, it's about excellence, right? There's a difference between perfection and excellence.
Explain that.
And excellence is think about think about 90% complete, right? And this is going to be tough for like creatives. 90% complete and shared with the world makes more of an impact than 100% perfect and stuck in your head,
Stop.
stuck in your journal,
Stop.
stuck in your
Oh,
hard drive.
You had to say the J word,
You
journal.
know what I mean?
So
He said the J word.
you saying that, homie said something similar in the chat. He says you cannot keep it unless you give it away.
Right.
So, Jazzy Jeff did an album where he invited all these musicians and they did a collective album in a certain amount of days. There's a song on there, and this was one of my first interactions with Severe. He sent me this song, and Jazzy Jeff says, "Die empty. Die empty." All the creativity that which mirrors what you're saying. Everything that you have inside, let it out. Give it a voice. Give it away. You don't want to die with anything being held in, with anything like, oh, here's my journal. I'm not going to share these words, or I'm not going to share this song, or I'm not going to try to do this. Die empty. Let all of your gifts go. Like, release it. And that resonated with me so much because I think about how much my insecurities and my fears and my uncertainties just completely capped all of what I really have to offer. it's just stomping on top of all of that.
Well, I can't remember who it was just talked about this very thing. He said something like, ain't no way people are going to be releasing any projects from me posthumously. Because ain't like you're not going to see anything from you're not going to see anything posthumously because I'm putting it all out.
It's all done.
Right.
As it should be. And so going back to a safe space, right? And I talk about this all the time with DJ Hex and with Ray, right? I like to DJ, but I'm not trying to be a professional DJ.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to do any of that in any way, shape, or form. But they've given me a space where I can play and I can try it. And if I screw up, it's okay, because literally in my head, and my brother's in the chat, Michael Moda, I do want to say this. Like, growing up, I was surrounded by a family of musicians and improvisers.
Ooh.
And they knew how to just like get in, play a song, transition it as a live performance. I remember always saying like, well, can we practice? Can we practice? Because I don't have that skill of improvisation like you. But if I practice, I know that I can hit this note and I know that I can memorize these lyrics. But that was never necessarily fostered. So that became a fear of mine and prevented me from wanting to exercise that side of me creatively, which now at 42, I'm going to be 42. Now at this age, and I felt bad. I was like, Jesus Christ, you're this age and you're barely starting to feel in a safe creative space. But hey, I'm fortunate that I do get to at least get it out of my system, get it out.
See, it's again, it goes back to that timing, right? And even our past guest Anita, her explaining that also was just like, hey, look, I'm this old and I'm just now going through this.
Getting in touch with her feminism, her feminine
So it's
side.
just like, you gotta trust time, right? I think that might be one of the first things you gotta do, is be able to trust time. And then also just going to what SP mentioned earlier, is just like, don't do that to yourself. Don't put yourself in a negative light, because once you do that, it becomes a pattern.
Yeah.
And everything you start doing is a reflection of that, right? So it's just like, if I say I can't do this thing, then when I look at other people, I'm gonna start looking at them like, why the hell are you doing that now? Like, this old? Like, you're this old now?
See, and how do we reframe that, right? So like, you know what? At 42, guess what I get to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's how we have to.
Right? So,
yes, we have to change that.
Because it's like, it's one of those things like for me, like, I'm gonna be 47 this year.
I was about to ask earlier. No,
I'm about to be 47 this year, and and that's why I tell you and I tell so many people that I'm like, my goodness, I'm not taking any of this for granted. Like, there might be some people there that are like, damn, you're 47, you still DJing? I was like, I'm gonna reframe. I was like, I'm 47, I'm still DJing. Yes. You know what I mean?
Ironically, I share that sentiment, because I'm gonna be 37 this year, and I look at it like, a lot of people could look at me and be like, you're 37 and you're just now doing this. It's just like, I've been DJing for 20 years.
Right.
Yes, I'm just now at that spot, but how long have you been doing what you're doing? And where do you plan on taking it? Right. So it's just like, there's certain ways of how we go about putting like the context towards whatever it is that we got to remind ourselves. Like, it's just, you're going to be 24 and reverse. Right. But I'm sorry, I couldn't do that with yours. That would have been a way different number, bro. But you have to remind yourself of that. And I'm glad that someone other than myself was able to express that, because you do.
For anybody out there listening and you're debating whether you want to pursue a dream or not, I was like, don't let anybody who gave up on their dream talk you out of it.
Yeah, they can have a voice.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's usually those people.
Okay,
and
let me just give you a predicament then, right? Because here's my fear and how that ties in, right? So I did leave a career in aviation for over 20 years, a nice, very comfortable position, right? Because I wanted to leap into this unknown territory that I had tapped into 22 years ago. I started my journey in the music industry, but I had kids. how to raise a family, and so I put a pin on it, put it on pause. But now here I am, putting it all on the line, right?
Yeah.
I'm saying, okay, I'm gonna do this. My fear is, how much more time am I gonna waste for my, like, what else am I gonna screw up with my kids for being absent or for not? And I'm thinking about what he's gonna say. How can you reframe this, right? Because and I'm already reframing it in my head, right? I don't want to mess up more for my kids than I already have. But you know, the louder voice in my head is, I don't want them to live a life absent of what they want to do.
Right. What you're doing is modeling for them that, hey, like, you can't put an age on pursuing a dream, right? Like, for some, like you said, for practical reasons and reasonable reasons, you put a pin, but it's there. Like, you didn't give up on it. You're like, okay, not yet. Right. You know, it wasn't a no. It wasn't a never. It was a not yet. And then now you get the opportunity. And that's the way I look at it. Like, when there was a time when I was traveling to DJ conferences, right? And I was away from my kids. There were a time where I was like, man, I feel bad. Right. Especially when I'm saying bye and, like, my daughter's crying and, I feel bad, but I'm like, okay, what if they're seeing this and, they're like, okay, well, when I get older, I can take these opportunities.
Yes.
And as long as, and for me, as long as, like, when I am home, I'm present. Right.
Right.
And I want to be able to model that. And in a way, I'm kind of seeing it because, like, I don't know if y'all, like, saw it, but, like, my daughter was elected the very very first student board member for the Board of Education for our school district.
And she's only 14.
She's 14, yeah. So she gets to vote on anything except for, like, personnel matters, right? So she's reviewing the budget with, like,
she's got a voice.
Yeah. So in a way, it's like, okay, like, I'm, like, through modeling, I'm giving her permission to take these risks, like, to because she came home and she was like, hey, a principal approached me and said they're doing this position at the board, and she recommended that I applied, and I'm like, okay, and I did. Is that okay? I was like, absolutely, yes, right? So it's one of those things where I'm like, okay. I was like, I want her to, like, take these risks.
Leaps.
Yeah,
these leaps.
So I'm like, okay, it could be, I'm not taking, like, entire credit for it, but I'm like, okay, maybe I am modeling something, for her to see, right? That it's okay, and if she didn't get it, then we'll talk about it.
That's okay too.
And you got to experience it. You got to understand, and there's a process for everything. And once you experience it, everything, going back to what you and homie said, is everything you learn, you could end up teaching, right?
Yes.
So it's just none of it is for nothing, right? So it's just like, even if it wasn't the desired outcome, you're still able to teach it.
Right.
You're still able to learn these things. I remember one of the clients that I had not too long ago, he actually he was in the major leagues, and it didn't work out for him. But now he's coaching one of my other clients, and my client, he's only like 9 years old, but he's coaching him, and he's gonna coach him to bring him up in through the system,
right?
In order for him to become a major league player.
Yeah.
At 9 years old, he's already honing this kid, but because he went through that process and understands what that process was at that level, he's now taking what he learned, and didn't have the desired outcome of it, and putting it towards something for someone that it could change a generation for them. And you never appreciate what we call failures, because in that moment.
Actually, Severe just did a wedding up north for the San Francisco Giants. He's an employee of the San Francisco Giants. We did their wedding. He said he'd never.
He better have charged double then.
Ooh, we did.
Pineapples.
So typically when we do weddings, I'm a sucker for speeches. You will see me crying in the corner. Like, it doesn't take a lot for me to get very emotional. And Severe isn't really fazed by speeches. But what we learned was that gentleman, he actually used to play for the Dodgers.
Oh, okay.
When he was younger.
Okay.
And his brother, in his, speech, talked nothing about, like, only spoke about his brother's failures. And he kept saying, he failed and he messed up here and he did this wrong and he did, but every single time he got up. And he said it was one of the most profound speeches that he had ever heard, where something negative about a person's life was highlighted into the best part of his life, which were his failures. And I was like, yeah. And I'm a big believer in that. Like, your failures, they're your teachers.
Right.
They are your teachers. I encourage.
See,
failure.
that's why I love baseball, because baseball is a game of failure. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's like, as they say, if you succeed 3 times out of 10, you're a good hitter. You know what I mean? That's 30%. Anywhere is 30%.
Is that a good, right, acceptable?
I try to explain that to my parents, and they're like, "No, you still failed, bro." That's an F.
Imagine
that's still an F.
See, and my son's not as studious as my oldest, so I can see him like getting older. It's like, well, to his teacher, it was like,
But
well,
see, so
in baseball, this.
so
Let's
so
look at
for
that.
him, because I'm the same way, right? Like, my brother was the academically, like,
Okay.
he had that intellect. My mom used to always say, like, I don't know how the hell you did it, but you graduated with more credits. And I graduated, like, I think my senior year, I only had like 3 classes. And
Oh,
like,
nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was going home while everybody was barely going like to lunch.
Yeah.
Like, I was
You were like, I'm out.
Yeah, I like, peace.
You were ahead of the game.
But she was like, you finessed the system. Like, you were able to figure out how to get all these bad progress reports, all these F's and these D's.
You figured out how to meet your needs.
Exactly. There you go. Look at you,
Oh,
dog.
circling back,
Look at you,
circling
dog.
back.
I'm not a failure more because I meet my needs.
But that's true though.
Yeah.
But see, and that's the thing is, like, your son, he just processes things differently.
Right.
He can't sit there and study and look at the same, because I can't do that, bro. My wife makes fun of me all the time. Like, you read? Like, I got 4 books, right? I got Alicia Keys, Will Smith.
And what about Bo Jackson? No.
Bo Knows Bo.
And Tupac.
Tupac's is a poetry book, so that's
Still a
all
book.
the
It's
Rose
still a
that
book.
Grew-
Still a book.
So I had like, okay, I got 5 books, because then I have the one about Childish Ravine. But those, like, these are the things that I read, and I'm the type of person, I like reading about other people.
Me too.
I like being
Henceforth.
interested in
Yeah.
what they do, but I don't read because it's not sustainable for me. There's nothing for me to gain unless I'm truly interested in what I need to read. I will figure it out at some point. I will be able to manage and, like you said, do it within the means of what I need to be successful. And I think that's where, going back to what we've talked about in the past with and Severe's always mentioned it, just like the education system.
Right.
And the flaw in it.
God.
It's just like we're not teaching them what they need to know.
The absence of.
It's just like we're teaching them what we think they should know. Right. But it's just like, I'm never gonna dissect a frog ever again in my life. Like, I didn't have to do this. I failed at this. Now I got a mark on my transcripts because I couldn't dissect a frog or an eyeball. Like, I'm a DJ. What the hell do I have to do with anything?
Math was important if you were a DJ. Math was important.
Yeah. To a certain extent. Addition, division, multiplication, subtraction.
But it's all
But but you're right though. Like, it's the failure. I mean, we can go in a rabbit hole talking about the failure of institutions, but like, and I'm seeing that, and I'm glad that, our school district is small, but I'm glad that they're taking steps in inviting, like, young people to have a voice.
That's super important.
And
young
I think
people and older people.
It has to start in those type of districts,
right?
In those smaller districts, because the bigger districts, a lot of times they're complacent. They're like, no, we've done it like this for years, and this is the success we have. Whereas as opposed to like the smaller schools, they have a greater chance of being able to risk it all.
Yeah.
And becoming an example, right? Because it's just like, well, if this smaller district was able to figure out how to go about going with this type of teaching or this type of counseling, right? Let's use the model from here. And some people take offense of being a guinea pig, but at the end of the day, it's just like you are part of the beginning of a process that could change the world in a sense.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's okay to be a guinea pig.
Well, think of all, like, it's fresh in my head because next week I get to actually like speak at a conference about DJing and self-care, which is super exciting. But part of the research from this workshop is, you know, kind of reading up on the history of DJing and hip hop, and I'm reminded that Kool Herc was 16 years old when he started this whole thing. He was an immigrant, you know, and he was a teenager, you know, who started all of this, right? So, you know, I'm, and you know, for those who don't know, I worked as a youth pastor for 13 years. So I can see like, you know, people are too scared to like give young people voices because obviously, right, they're still, you know, sometimes they can.
Threat.
What's that?
It's a threat.
And not just a threat, but like it's about control, right? Like you can, you know, in a way you can't control teenagers because, you know, depending on what age stage they are, they'll just say what, you know, they say what they say.
They word vomit.
Right. So, yeah. So I really think, you know, it sounds cliche, but, you know.
KRS-One did an interview where he implored for people to listen to the younger generation and the older generation. That if you take a balance of the people before and after you, they hold all of the answers.
Yeah.
And you then have the opportunity to take from both experiences and build on that because you don't know everything.
Because like I was listening to a podcast a while ago about like the whole generation gap, right? So this individual was talking about how he needed to learn how to change his tire, right? So he was, you know, he considered himself a millennial, right? Okay. So he went on YouTube, right?
Everything's like YouTube.
He went and he's like, you know what? But after all of that, I still called my dad. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's like, so there is value in you know, in bridging that gap. And I think tying it back to mental health, by bridging that gap can create so much healing. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think what you're doing, you know, you have kids older than mine, and what you're doing is you're bridging that gap.
And let me tell you, because I live in a funny household because my mom is very set in her ways, like very set in her ways. And things that I've tried to convey to my mom, like, Mom, what if you look at it like this? Or you think about it like it's just a hard stop.
Yeah.
But suddenly, out of left field come my kids explaining it in a different way than I do. And all of a sudden, it makes sense to my mom. And I'm like, what the hell? I've been trying to tell you this for the last 10 years. And it takes one of these clowns. And I say clowns because it frustrates me. And you get it.
She respects them more than she respects you.
I do. And I get I love my kids. They're my best friends. But I've seen how it all comes together. And I've seen how my mom listens to what the feedback that my kids have to say, because then she's also witnessing the exchange that I have with my kids, and it all comes together. And it's I think of everybody, like I'm proud of my kids and the development and their growth, but I want to say I'm even more proud of my mom because she's a grown woman who already has her own theories and, you know, pieces about herself that she is the way she is. There's nothing that's going to change her. To see her now flex into a different realm and understanding, I'm really proud of that. And I'm really happy to see her envelop a different perspective. Progress is slow. It's been very slow. but it's there.
It's
And I
tough.
admire that from her.
It's tough, especially if you come from a family of immigrants.
Yes.
Right? You know, because I'm convinced that immigrants, they're always on alert. They're always on survival mode.
Yeah.
That's like their constant mindset is about survival, because that's what they had to do, right? To, you know, to make it, you know, coming here. And that's what I think of a lot of my family. So like the way they approach, like for example, like career advice,
Oh,
right? It's, you know, it's like, I want, you know, like now I'm understanding, hey, we are giving you this career advice because we want you to survive,
correct.
you know, not realizing that, hey, it's not really about survival right now. You know what I mean? It is, but it isn't. It's not in the survival that like you had to go through, but it's like, again, now that I'm understanding, it was like, they're not doing it to like necessarily to shit on my dreams, right? It's I was like, we want you to, we love you,
And we want you to
we
survive.
want-
We want
we
you
want
to
you to sur-
thrive. We want you to
right.
do better. And I
Right.
get that. And we always talk about the whole goal is to improve the generations thereafter.
Mm-hmm.
It frustrates the hell out of me because my mom, I mean, obviously my mom's first language is Spanish, right? And she speaks perfect English and writes perfect English. This woman will still to this day send me a message like, can you just review this email I'm about to send out and make sure that it's okay and I'm not missing anything? And sometimes it's the same emails that she's been sending and there's nothing wrong with it and it's perfect. And I'm telling her, Mom, I've seen the grown ass people not of your descent write way worse than this. And they don't give a shit. They're still emailing this terrible,
Born and bred in the good US
born and
of
bred
A.
here, terrible grammar, just no structure at all. And you've been there for 30 years and you're still worried about something not coming out perfect. Survival mode. Like you
Right.
still have this fear that they're going to call you out on
Right.
something when you've overly established you're good. And that now, and saying that out loud, that really breaks my heart sometimes because sometimes I wish that she could just relax in her craft. Relax in your craft. You're good. You know what you're doing there. You're there for a reason.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry if something doesn't come out right because people do it for less.
I mean, it could be an insecurity, but it could also be just her way of being a perfectionist at that. Right? Like maybe perhaps.
But that comes around though.
Yeah.
Perfectionism stems from
insecurity.
insecurity.
I can see that. You're right. Yeah.
Which is interesting because I'll always call her numbers, like number wise. I'm, Mom, did I do this percentage right? Like she's like, you've
But-
asked me the same ass
so-
question 20 times.
But it's because you guys recognize and respect the value that
Our
that they
expertise
hold.
is.
Yeah. So, yeah, I like what Erica actually had mentioned earlier. She said that it's wild. Hold on, where'd you go? It says it's wild when her youngest simplifies real life stuff and explains it in her own words.
That's what my youngest does all the time.
And it's true because I think the older we get, we feel the need to make things more complex than they should
Or
be.
control, as you said.
Right.
Yeah. Control.
What's that? What did I hear? It's like you can have growth or you can have control, but you can't have both.
Ooh.
I read like it's one of those things where you read it and you like it sticks. You can have growth or you can have control, but
You can't have both.
That's
Yeah.
true. That's true. They end up like manipulating each other if you try to, right? Like you end up it's like holding a tortilla. Like one of them's gonna burn your hand at some point because it's too hot.
And actually, no, that's actually something I've learned along the way is like letting go of things. And we talked about it earlier when Ray was saying like your path has already been written and God's gonna find a way to, if you deviate, whether you like it or not, he's gonna forcefully put you back on that path. And I've learned, because I always want to control everything, right? I want to control the narrative. I want to control what happens. I want to control how things go down because you're in this fear that what if something goes wrong and how can I prepare, right? And I think now I've learned to just like let go. Things are going to happen how they need to happen. Work with integrity. Be good to people. Give to people. And that's going to cover itself. And that's the whole purpose to everything is letting go of that control. Trusting your path and then just giving. And I think the combination of those three things will provide growth and provide
Not to say that you don't prepare. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
you stay ready, but at the same time, that's what you can control.
Well, you have to
your
accept,
preparation.
you got to accept the change,
Right.
That too.
because it's not always what you prepare for, right? A lot of times, like what you had mentioned earlier about just being like the preventative versus the restoration
aftercare.
of the aftercare.
Aftercare.
Like
That just blew my mind.
like you could prepare for all this, but you still have to go through that aftercare process too. Like
Right.
you have to. I'm gonna do what I got to do to prevent this from happening, but that doesn't mean I'm not gonna become exhausted at the end of whatever the situation may be.
Yeah.
So you still, but the thing is, you can't neglect either or. You have to.
Has to be a balance of both.
You have to go out and do that.
It's like any sport. And I remember where I used to work. I'm like, we need to run an organization like you run a sport. In any sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
You prepare. You work out. You exercise. You plan your plays. You practice. You do all that stuff, right? There's your preparation, your self-care. And then you play the game. Whether you win or lose, you're reviewing the tape. You're looking at it. You're like, what did we do wrong? How could we improve? Who do we need to move where? How can we get that win next? And then it's the circle of life. You prepare the next day. You practice. That's it. That's it.
If you think about life as a marathon, right? Y'all just did the LA marathon, right?
Yes, we did. All of the LA marathon. Ooh.
Wait a minute.
So the runners
Don't give us props like we ran it. We just
We did all the entertainment. We did all the entertainment.
If you can tell, I haven't ran anything in a while.
No, but we provided all the entertainment.
So thinking about all those runners, right? 26.2 miles, right?
That's freaking crazy.
So did they wait till the end to get like
no.
drinks?
No,
right? But they still had something at the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
So throughout, what did they have? They had stations, right?
Yes.
Self-care throughout, right? And then at the end, there's the aftercare because, like you said, just because I'm practicing self-care doesn't mean at the end of it I might still need aftercare, right? So if we're looking at life as a marathon, that's how that's how marathons are organized. Like throughout, there's some stations where they're refueling, they're taking care of their bodies so that they can, and not everybody's gonna make it at the same time. Everybody's going at their pace, right? So there's gonna be people there that are like, boom, like I'm making it there, like first. But there are some people that I'm gonna finish. Right?
And I never would have thought about that, but you're 1,000% right, because when we start the race and Raymond opened up one of the races, well, actually, Severe did Saturday, and you did. I keep hitting you. I'm so sorry. Severe did Saturday.
You called me Raymond. That was weird.
Oh gosh, but they're playing music for everyone to prepare for this race. People are stretching. You're doing it's the whole mental preparation thing. And then you're right. Throughout the duration of the race, there's all these stations. There's water. There's more music. There's people cheering you along. And then at the very end, your banana, your blanket, and then they did have like massage therapists, like for that aftercare that you needed. That's 1,000% a great way to.
Did they have like pizza at the end or no? Did they have like?
I think it depends where.
I don't remember
you go.
pizza. Like I just remember bananas everywhere.
I know. Hector was in the beer garden, so it was non-alcoholic beer though. So they were like, there's like a beer garden, and in that, I guess the plaza or that space, and there was different like restaurants that you could go.
Okay.
But I never saw a runner eat. They usually, of all the marathons.
So the preparation is to carb up before that, right? And I only say that because again, my dad has ran like 16 LA marathons, so I've grown. I as a child just watched the process, and what it takes, right? And so exactly how you explained it is exactly what it is. Like there's the preparation, and not just the preparation of that day. It's the preparation prior. Like I remember my dad would not eat anything but carbs for like the first 2-3 days before the actual marathon. Insane. Like leading up, it's just pastas and breads and things that were gonna fuel him because your body needs all those carbs in order to carry you throughout that entire 26-mile race. So there's that, and then going through that process of the actual race again, like you said, like the game, right? But even within each of those things, there's something within that you have to prepare for every time. There's never a space for complacency.
Yeah.
In anything in life. right? Because you have to prepare for the day of, but with the day of, you have to be prepared for that moment and what's going to happen through that moment. And like you said, throughout that entire time, there's things in place to self-care, and you have to acknowledge that you can't neglect it, because when you neglect it, how many times did we see someone do this in the middle of the race?
That was actually
stop,
really scary.
stop
Like
mid,
full blown,
just cramp
their
up.
whole body. I'd never seen it. That scared the daylight out of me.
And the chances of that happening is because somewhere along the line they've neglected the self-care.
That scared me.
Whether it was before the race or during the race.
And I wanted to help them. I'm like, oh my God. He's like, you can't do anything.
Where they could have just been like, there's that water station, I'll just wait till the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sometimes you can't wait till the next one. And again, like you said, you have to go about living life that way. Like, when there's a hand out for you, take it. When there's something in place to make your life or your situation a little bit easier, don't be too proud to take it. And I say that from experience, because my wife could attest to that. I'm the first person to ask something last. I will never ask for help. I will do it on my own, and it probably bugs the shit out of her, right? But at the same time, it's built who I am. But in knowing that and understanding that and having these conversations with my wife, I'm able to have these type of conversations with Rickie and building the business and what we do here in Rose City Sound. Because in that same aspect, and how you say, like, building a business like a team.
It is.
Like, you have to do that, because there's always the performance. There's the preparation before the performance, and then the after performance. But even after the after performance, there's that ride home. And in that ride home is always this is what happened, this is how we could change it. This is what we could do for this next one, for the next person.
Debrief or whatever.
It's just like...
And you know what? I had a friend of mine this week said, well, what is it that you want with Rose City Sound? What is it that you want to accomplish? I think that the answer they were expecting was like a financial one or milestone one, or what is it going to look like? What I realized as I was, and I didn't answer right away. I actually took my time to really think about what is it that I wanted for me personally. And then I realized that I had it, right? That we've been through so much as an organization, as a team, and as a family, that in the last 3-4 years, we got to a place now where collectively as a group, we've built trust, we've built communication, we've built an actual team.
Yeah.
And that's what I want. That is what I desire. A group of people who can rely on one another, who can build on one another, because whatever comes from there is what's gonna come from there.
Right.
But if you don't have that solid foundation and that connection between, that loyalty between this group of people, what do you have?
And that's on two levels. And I know a lot of times I always say, like, you can't mix personal with professional, but in that regard of how we have built the team, you have to go about it professionally and personally. You have to be comfortable with these people personally in order to say, I can continue with these people professionally. If I can trust them with my own personal life,
correct,
then I can trust them with my business.
I'm a big believer of that. I'm a really, and that's, and you want to talk about modeling things, right? That's growing up. That's what I was around. I saw my parents in the line of work that they did. They blended both things, and I saw the wonderful things that they cultivated as a result. So that's how I operated. I'm like, okay, cool. The people that I work with, they're my friends. They're the people that I trust. What wonderful things can we do? But that is controversial to a lot of people. Because,
it is.
because it's like, wait a minute, no, you need to compartmentalize. You need to separate things. You need to do this. Well, you know what? That's cool, and that can work for some people. But that's not how I want to work.
But see, I think also there's always context to any type of situation, and I think that's what we always have to recognize. That goes to the assessment part of life that SP was talking about earlier. It's just like, there are personal things that you cannot attach to professional, right? But just understanding that I trust you personally,
correct?
Yeah,
then I could trust you professionally. Obviously, there's other elements personally that don't match with going into being professional, but you have to acknowledge and assess that.
And it's gonna be it's gonna be individual, right? Like no matter what it is, no matter if it's a professional relationship or personal relationship, it's important to have some level of boundaries,
Yes.
right? But when it's, when it's this type of context where, like obviously in a corporate environment, it's different, right? It's different, but I also have to be careful. Am I turning my boundaries into walls? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like that can easily happen. And now when it becomes a wall, then there's no trust there.
Wait,
Right?
what's the difference between a boundary and a wall?
So if you think of, if walls are made to keep people out, right? Walls are designed to keep people out, or to like, you stay over there. But boundaries, like you can cross boundaries, right? But at the same time,
you can still kind of get in.
Yeah, but there's safety.
There's a door for you to be able to
there's
access.
safety there. Like there's safety there. They're like, hey, like you're welcome, but at the same time, like I'm responsible for this boundary, right? But when it's a wall, I don't see you, and you can't see me.
Right.
So it's like, for me, I have to be cautious, and I think, and at the same time, you want to be able to be mindful of your boundaries, right? Even like, just because boundaries are there, you can neglect those boundaries, and
Right.
and like, and just kind of like, just let, just, it's okay, right? And again, that stems from, whatever you have to resolve within yourself. But but it's important, kind of like, what you said. Hey, like, as I get to know newer people, right? It's like, okay, I can trust you with it. And that's why I appreciated when you said earlier, it's like, hey, what is something that's off topic, right? Because
Yes.
you're saying, hey, it's okay for you to practice, to express your boundaries, even in this,
Context.
in this space. So yeah, like even in, as I grow to get to know you all, it's like boundaries are going to shift, right? I was like, okay, like I was safe enough to tell them this, so I think I'm going to be safe to kind of bring more
Yes.
this to it.
into it, right? So
Little by little.
right. So it's like, one of the things that I used to teach teenagers at a camp is, when it comes to like building relationships with other people, is like meaningful and lasting relationships are formed when we reveal ourselves to others and others reveal themselves to us. And it's not just about like talking, right? Like, so like the way you're like looking at me right now while I'm like talking, you're revealing yourself to me. You're not even saying it. You're not even saying
anything.
You're not even saying
I can feel
anything.
it. I can feel it.
You know
Oh
what
God,
I mean?
no.
So like you're looking at me. You're like, I'm really, I want to hear what
What you're saying is resonating with me,
Right.
and I didn't say anything.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
right. So,
Oh God, jeez.
That's reading the body language.
and that's and there's the Moravian rule, where I think it's like 7% is words, and I don't know the numbers, but like the highest form of communication is body language. So it's the lowest form is the words that being said. Next is the tone, and the highest is body language. So
Damn.
based on this guy's rule, this intellectual dude, right, doctor, body language is the most important form of communication, because I can be like,
That makes sense.
like you can be like, hey, SP, you all right? Yeah, I'm good.
Right.
But even in asking,
Or even tone, yeah, I'm good.
even asking,
Yeah, I'm
the,
good, I'm
even
good.
even asking the question, like, yo, SP, you good? And then you're on your phone, just,
Right. Yeah.
oh, this motherfucker didn't really want to know if I'm good or not.
Right. Damn. You're 1,000% right. No, I'm
And
just-
that's actually one of the key factors to like. So, how you and my wife and everybody else claims how perfect I am, right? Like in the aspect of like being able to confide in me, right?
Yeah.
It's because it's those type of things. Like you might just be hearing the conversation, but I'm actually watching the conversation and I'm seeing how this person, like, if a person normally talks to you like this, but then all of a sudden they start getting a little bit more fidgety with
Or antsy.
it's just like, but because you're focused on listening and I'm watching what their mannerisms
I get it.
are and all
I
that
get
is,
it.
it's like, let's pump the brakes on that one right there.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm just thinking. I'm thinking of specific relationships in my life where I've tried to say that I have boundaries, but I have very thick walls with people. I'm just realizing that part. And yes, for the record, your wife.
I gotta fix that. Actually, we were just in the realm of being a perfectionist because this one says I'm perfect. My wife says I'm not. My wife just doesn't want to admit that 9 out of 10 times, maybe 10 out of 10 times, I'm usually right. But we won't go. But we won't go into that. We won't go into any of that.
You're an old man. That's what it is. It's just you're old. You're like 30. How old are you?
I already said it, so you
I
gotta
can't
rewind
remember.
it.
It's like 37 or 35. I don't know. But look, I see the walls that I have with people, and now I'm looking back at the different body languages. It's terrible.
But sometimes you might have to have a wall.
No, you have to.
You know what I mean?
But see, that's like homie said. You got to compartmentalize that. You have to know who you're gonna do that with and who you're not gonna do that with. I'm sure, like in our relationship, and Rickie and I have only known each other what, maybe 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until maybe I'd say the last 2 years where the walls started coming down, right? Like, and now it's just like, whoa, I know everything. Whoa.
So
Back it up.
sometimes you gotta have a wall, and
Where's
just
that
like you have to have a wall, and you have to have the ring, and you
Yeah.
just kind of watch from your phone.
Yeah, no.
The
The
ring!
People, you just watch people. I was like, you just talk to them through the ring until I was like, all right,
it's
you
not
come
even
in.
it's not even a wall.
like that.
You know how she does it now. So she thinks she's putting up a wall, but it's just a mesh netting. So it's like I can still see it.
You're terrible at hiding it. You can't bring the wall
I can
back.
still see what you're not trying to show me right now.
That's the ring. We all need a ring in our life.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Wait, to close this episode out, because we've been here for 2 hours, and I love how easily
wow.
we can. Yes. Oh wow! Exactly right. How easily we can have these conversations.
Easy
I want to
peasy.
circle it back to the original thing I wanted to bring up about the cookies, and the conversation that I had with Severe is that sometimes there's so much going on. Go back and do a very simple thing, right? Go
Yeah.
back and take care of something. Get your hands dirty, and just in the simple form of being a human being, growing a plant. And in this case, sometimes I look at it as baking a cookie, taking the time to develop a recipe, to figure out what tastes good, what doesn't. You're spending time with yourself and this cookie that everybody else gets joy from. And that's kind of, I guess, was my closing question to you. Is that how this kind of came about as an act of, hey, I want to do something, simplify something? Or how did that come about?
So, I mean, I've always loved being in the kitchen. Growing up, both my parents cooked, and probably two best pieces of advice my dad taught me while I was watching him cook is he's like, son, if you like to eat, you gotta learn how to cook. And then he followed it up with, you gotta learn how to cook because you never know who you're gonna end up marrying. And at first, I didn't understand that until I met my wife, who does not cook.
Really?
She's like a whiz on finances, and I'm not. So that's like
Oh, there it is.
so she's got that on lock, and I am like totally fine, making the meals, and now learning because I never considered myself a baker. My space was on the top of the oven, not underneath
Not inside.
it. Yeah, but through the pandemic, I that was my goal too. I baked my own bread like during the pandemic.
It's crazy.
I didn't want to, especially when there was like a shortage of bread. Remember that?
Oh,
Remember
yes.
that? So I was like, I'm just gonna learn how
Like, not
to
me.
bake my own. So I was able, like, we loved Hawaiian rolls. So like
those are
that's what I kind of mastered, is making my own Hawaiian rolls at home. And then these cookies,
Oh, no.
which were inspired by the chef that Vinny and I both
Yeah.
watched, and I just kind of took it and made my own tweaks to it, used different ingredients, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give them as gifts.
You know what, man?
Right, and then it was Babito again. That was like,
Radar.
I was like,
Yeah.
see if you can do a little something with this. I was like, I'll place an order, right? And I was like, I don't know. And
Wow. So he initiated the orders.
Yeah. He
Oh,
was like,
man.
and this was like maybe like almost a year before I actually made the leap.
Wow.
Because I started like researching on YouTube, and again, the whole your brain talking your I was like, I'm hearing a lot of people that made a business out of their cookies and all these treats, and then they ended up burning out and blah, 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 so I'm like, I'm just gonna I'm just gonna give them as gifts, and then finally, after more conversations and after talking to Severe, and I was like, you know what, maybe there is something to it. So I made that huge batch for real ones,
Yes.
just to kind of like market test it to see how people, outside of the circle will like it. So I was like, okay, like people really enjoyed it. And then my wife was watching the stream. I was like, everybody's talking about your cooking in the chat. And I was like, for real?
It's always about the cooking.
Yeah. And
Bro,
I was like,
and not just in your chat. Like
In other people.
I know for certain, bro, that in my chat, I talk about your fucking cookies all the time. Since the day I had that cookie, that's all I've ever fucking talked about. And it's safe to say that in my household and in Rickie's household, you are a fucking legend, bro. Because those cookies,
oh man, thank you.
They pack a punch.
And the ironic part about it is, so my son always tells my wife, Dad doesn't like stuff like that. I don't ever see him, like I'll buy cookies, and when I buy cookies, it's because I want cookies, right? Most of the time, I'm not really the one that eats them.
Yeah.
But when I buy these, I told my wife, and I hope my kids aren't listening because we're taking some home. You better put them away somewhere because
Hide them. Hide your kids. Hide
these
your wife.
little homies ain't touching nothing. Nothing. They get a piece, but amazing,
I mean,
bro.
that's like over the pandemic. I think that's where I kind of channeled my energy. I still have that kind of like, that feeling towards like DJing, right?
Right.
But for me, I think my step towards resolving that and healing was I put all my energy
It's a balance.
into create, because like I had that desire to create, right? So like I made it kind of like a challenge for me. I was like, okay, since we can't really eat out, right? Like, especially at the height of like the pandemic, and I'm like, and these DoorDash expenses are
Oh my God,
are
it's
ridiculous.
bananas. Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna look up recipes. So the places that we can't really go to, I'm gonna try to recreate them at home. So like
Damn.
that's kind of like the way I like, obviously there were some that flopped, but then there were some that I'm like, ooh,
This is good.
this is gonna stick. This is gonna stick. So yeah, I think I mean, I didn't even think about it that way, about how even though I enjoy doing it, it actually, it's sometimes it's something that you already know how to do,
Right.
that can help care for your soul.
And enhance
Right.
the soul, right?
Right.
Enhance different parts of the other creative parts of your life
Yes.
too, right? Because now I'm thinking, well, can we get a cookie mix, like literally a set, the best songs to eat cookies to, like that's what I think about.
Yeah.
Like, or what is the best mix that you like to listen to while you're baking these cookies? Like all of that goes into it, because it's all energy and it all goes into the cookie. SP, please tell our listeners where they can find you on the internet.
All right. So on all my socials, pretty much, it's DJ SP is me. So DJ SPISME. So it's just DJ SP is me, because that's my initial. That's who I am. So that's how you'll find on Instagram, on Twitch. Those are the two places that I'm most active. So yeah, come follow me on there.
And that's where people can place their orders for cookies.
Yes. So I usually post, and that's something, like I talk about, like I didn't want to burn out from this. So the way I manage that is, okay, I'm going to open up pre-orders and I will close them at a certain time.
And,
Yes,
and
that's
that,
smart.
That works out, right? Like,
Yeah.
it seems like you have a good balance,
Yeah.
like of how you want to go about doing anything, which is really good. It goes back to the assessment.
Yeah, we don't want to see
I'm-
SP
I'm-
one day throwing these cookies. Fuck these fucking cookies! I'm not making these anymore. We do not want you to burn out at all whatsoever. But thank you so much
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
coming through, bringing us cookies. And I'm gonna say, I'm gonna walk away from this episode. I want to bring Bobby to the show because his intuition, and you affirmed it for me today. his intuition is something to be talked about.
Yeah.
Because I'm shocked, like I said, just from the interactions that I had with him this last year. I was like, this guy has a radar for people and things. So I definitely want to bring him on our show.
Yes.
But thank you again for coming all the way down here and spending this time with us and bringing us these delicious gifts. We appreciate you very, very much. Today's episode was produced live by this guy, Raymond Andrew, at Rose City Sound Studio with your hosts, me, SP, and Ray. For topic suggestions and sponsorships, please email us at onthisfrequency@gmail.com. If you missed this live stream episode, you can always catch it on YouTube. We drop these episodes every Wednesday, and you can find the link in our show notes if you listen on Spotify, Apple, Google, or Amazon. I hope I did Natalie justice with all of these
You know
speaking.
what? You did good enough.
Woo!
You did good enough.
If you love us, please subscribe, like, and share these episodes with a friend. We're always grateful for all of your support. You can also support the OTF team by buying us some coffee, and you can send us your donation at buymeacoffee.com/ on this frequency. Thank you so much, guys. We appreciate you, everybody in the chat. Have a good night, everybody. Happy Friday, 5 de Mayo.
Vénganse, vénganse. Vamos a jugar hoy, hoy, hoy. Vamos a cantar hoy, hoy, hoy. Vamos a llorar hoy, hoy, hoy. Vamos a fumar hoy, hoy, hoy. Vamos a jugar.